Welcome to Spirit Type of Paranormal. Tonight we're going to check out Pennhurst Asylum. So we went to Pennhurst Asylum. It was kind of a last minute Christmas thing. So there were only a couple of us that went. Me, Brandon, Rachel, and my daughter Isabella, who's hiding behind the camera right now. So there were a lot of other people there. It was a cool experience. The place definitely had a creepy vibe and a lot of history to it.
Pennhurst State School and Hospital opened its doors in Spring City in 1908 under the moniker Eastern Pennsylvania State Institution for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic. In 1903, roughly 4,000 people in Pennsylvania were found to require institutionalization, and construction began on the massive complex. Its many buildings were separated into two campuses. One primarily housed the patients and staff, while the other was dedicated to the many industries which the residents contributed. Among these included mattress and shoemaking, sewing, farming, and various domestic duties. Pennhurst had its own farm, hospital, firehouse, and morgue. It functioned as its own self-contained society, supported by deliveries from a nearby train depot built specifically to supply the massive demands of the institution. Its coal shipments fueled the engines of the power plant and were delivered through a series of tunnels that connected many of the buildings. Patient 1 was admitted on November 23rd of 1908, but the high hopes of the establishment's success were soon mired beneath the strains of overcrowding. Within 4 years, Pennhurst was well over its maximum capacity, as it was forced to accept a wide array of people that simply had nowhere else to go. The insular community not only housed the mentally infirmed, but it became a repository for those individuals whose society had turned its back to. The deaf, blind, and mute, immigrants, orphans, criminals, and even those with speech impediments were locked away inside walls which hid them from a world that seemingly didn't care to understand them. In 1913, the Pennsylvania legislature appointed a commission for care of the feeble-minded. The commission's conclusions included a statement that the feeble-minded were unfit for citizenship and that they posed a menace to the peace. The institution was thus intended to break the endless reproductive chain by those they deemed a blight on the world. In the biennial report to the legislature submitted by the Board of Trustees, Pennhurst's chief physician quotes the notorious Dr. Henry H. Goddard, declaring that every feeble-minded person is a potential criminal. Goddard was a prominent psychologist in the early 20th century, who is most notably credited with the introduction of the word moron as a clinical term and his role in the dubious movement of eugenics. The report goes on to reflect the callousness of society's handling of these individuals and states the following. The general public, although more convinced today than ever before that it is a good thing to segregate the idiot or the distinct imbecile, they have not yet been convinced as to the proper treatment of the defective delinquent, which is the brighter and more dangerous individual. It is now generally understood that feeble-mindedness is in the great majority of instances the direct result of hereditary transmission of mental defect. It is also known that the feeble-minded female is very likely to bear children, and that these children are almost certain to be defective or in some way permanently dependent. The feeble-minded girl is more of a menace to society than the feeble-minded boy. Statistics show that feeble-minded girls and boys marry in the ratio of 3 to 1. It would seem, therefore, that if the state is not adequately equipped to care for all of the feeble-minded girl should have institutional care in preference to the boy, since she is the greater menace. In 1968, reporter Bill Baldini broadcast a series of reports under the title Suffer the Little Children, which detailed the extreme conditions that had progressed within those walls during the previous 60 years. At the time, Pennhurst housed roughly 3,000 people, many of whom were children. This was approximately 1,000 more people than its maximum capacity. The overcrowding was an infection that spread to all aspects of the institution. The buildings that were once meant to help adjust the handicapped to life became a horrific prison of nightmares and cruelty. While many of the staff were dedicated to helping the residents, the disconnect between Pennhurst and the world around it nurtured a breeding ground of sadism that corrupted its integrity and created monsters of men. In 1937, a 15-year-old resident died from a brain hemorrhage and shot after being beaten by an attendant for allegedly stealing 95 cents. Though the attendant was charged with manslaughter, it did little to seize the depravity which composed the daily life of the unfortunate souls condemned to endure Pennhurst's violent legacy. As if from some Hollywood movie, Pennhurst employed a resident physician with the disturbingly appropriate name of Dr. Fear. In an interview conducted with Dr. Fear, he relayed a story detailing a sadistic method he devised to quell an unruly patient. To keep the patient in line, the doctor had created a concoction of medications administered by injection, which was engineered to inflict maximum pain without permanently damaging the individual. In 1972, only a few years after Mr. Baldini's expose, a young child was viciously strangled to death while being restrained. 2 more patients met their demise wandering into the nearby Schuylkill River, where they drowned. A few years later, in 1975, a child resident was found to have cigarette burns on his chest due to torture inflicted by the staff. 1 patient lost an eye, while another had their earlobe bitten off in an altercation. The punishment for such an action was the removal of the offending patient's teeth. In 1983, 9 Pennhurst employees were indicted on charges ranging from slapping and beating patients, including those in wheelchairs, to arranging for patients to assault each other as a form of entertainment. This, however, was not the most damaging court battle for the institution. In May of 1974, a lawsuit was filed by Philadelphia attorney David Perlinger, representing the patients of the Pennhurst State School. The lawsuit was later joined by the United States government and the Pennsylvania Association for Retarded Citizens. 3 years later, U.S. District Judge Raymond Broderick ruled that the conditions at Pennhurst State School violated patients' constitutional rights. Although mired in a lengthy appeals process lasting a decade, this lawsuit inevitably led to Pennhurst's closure. The suit, known as Haldeman v. Pennhurst, was originally filed on behalf of Terry Lee Haldeman, who at the age of 20 had suffered a series of unexplained injuries during her 10 years at the hospital. The testimony described the daily conditions at Pennhurst as a nightmarish hellscape. The patients would often be covered in urine and feces for days at a time, while the incessant sounds of screaming reverberated through the halls. Abuse and neglect were the daily reality for thousands of people. The hospital was a place where the dehumanization of its patients was routine procedure. Residents would often be barefoot due to a shortage of shoelaces. The residents had no privacy, often being forced to shower together with 2 to 3 residents utilizing the same shower head. They were given enemas lying face down on the cold tile floor while other residents watched. The injuries which were part of this lawsuit included broken bones, loss of teeth, drug overdose, lacerations, bruises, dehydration, unnecessary sedation, and bites. One of the plaintiffs fell down a flight of stairs in his wheelchair after being left unattended at the top of a staircase. Staff was known to put ice cubes down the shirts of sleeping residents and would also verbally abuse them while they were using the bathroom. The residents deteriorated tremendously in these conditions, and many stopped speaking entirely. The institution was finally shut down in 1987. Many lived and died within this true-life American horror story. It's not surprising that many confused and rightfully angry spirits may still remain in Pennhurst, which has earned a reputation as a paranormal hotspot. The property is now privately owned, and in addition to hosting a yearly Halloween haunt on premises, there are also regular paranormal investigations open to the public. Many such investigations have been conducted here, and many of the employees have their own stories to tell. Our experience here included the buildings of Mayflower and Devon, as well as the tunnels dubbed Philadelphia. Underneath the Mayflower building is an area which is blocked off from entrance. Within the locked door is rumored to lurk the surly and misogynist spirit of former maintenance man by the name of King.
There's a lot of kids here. A lot of kids died here.
They just might be
So they are talking
Yeah,
to you
I'm
guys.
gonna be 16 in like 2 months.
So there were a lot of other people there, so we couldn't really have a very scientifically based investigation. I think we did come up with some a little bit of information like EVP and that kind of thing. There were a lot of people. They did a weird spirit box session. I got video of that. Mostly we tried to wander off by ourselves to like me and Rachel would just be in a room sitting there in the dark by ourselves with no lights on, like trying to commune with the spirits and stuff. But man, there was a lot of noise and things of that nature, so it was hard to really get a good gauge of what was going on.
Yeah, I think we definitely got some EVP, but we weren't able to actually have a full-on EVP session without outside interference. But there was one point where I met up with you and we were talking and we heard something and you asked what its name was, and I think we got something like Chrissy or Christine. We couldn't quite make out, but there was definitely something there that responded, which we do have that we'll have to go over further.
What's your name? What's your name?
But
There was one thing that was pretty weird. When we were all in that one room, and it was in the end of a hallway, and everyone was standing around, and they were putting toys or something on the floor, and then they were telling me that there was like a thing behind me or whatever. I did feel a weird. So it was super cold the whole time because it's the middle of winter and there's no heat, obviously, because it's an abandoned, broken down place. So everything is cold everywhere. But I felt an actual cold spot, which is weird. And like I'm not trying to make a big deal about it, but it was like something that I felt physically that was definitely tangible. Like it felt like, you know, if you're in the pool and it's normal to feel like a cold spot in the water. Like, you know how that feeling is, everything's the same temperature, and then all of a sudden it's a cool spot and then it's normal again. That's what it felt like. It felt like I'm putting my hand through water. Like, I don't remember what I was reaching for, but it was like normal, and then it was way colder in a spot about this big, and then nothing.
I remember I was using the FLIR a lot, and it was really hard to use because it was so cold. So trying to find big temperature drops was really hard to come by.
That out.
But yeah, I tried using it, but I mean, everything was like below 30, so
Freezing. We are going to go back there probably in the spring or summertime with a larger crew, and so there's nobody else there, and then we can kind of control how the whole thing is set up and run. One thing that was kind of disappointing is I really wanted to see Candyland,
Oh yeah.
because that's supposedly where the children played, and it's super creepy. It looks like a dungeon with like candy like striped freaking pillars. It's super creepy.
Circus shit.
So they had like a flood in the basement, so you weren't supposed to go in there. But I snuck down in the basement because, I mean, that's why we were there. So, you know, and there's like a sign that says, "You're going to die," or some shit. I think there's a video of it. This probably means we're not supposed to go down there.
Yeah, they said we're not allowed down there anymore.
That's trash because that's where we need to go.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't hear anyone say that. So I go down to the basement, and it's real quiet because everyone's upstairs. Like everything is echoey, and it's real easy to get lost. Like as soon as I made a turn, there was doors everywhere, and the hallway went forever. And so I went and looked in one direction, and then I went in another direction, and I started to feel strange. Like it felt like that feeling where you're running up steps as a kid, and you know that there's something behind you chasing you up the steps. That's what it felt like. Something was following me. And then I started to feel weird, like I should probably get the hell out of here. There was a cool spot. There was like a little guard, I guess, where they brought I don't know why the hell you need a guard. A cage. There's a whole cage, I don't know.
Oh wow.
But I never found Candyland. I felt like I should probably get the heck out of there, actually. It felt a little weird. Maybe because I was by myself. It was totally quiet. I was just hearing my breathing, like walking down this thing. Like, it's just freaking strange. But yeah, so I got out of there. I never found it. So I'd like to do that when we get back. It feels weird down here. Everybody else is upstairs. We're not supposed to be down here because there was a flood. But it doesn't feel like I'm by myself. And I don't even know where the fuck I am now. Okay, that's the wrong way. I thought this was where the steps were.
So there was this one instance where I was actually walking into one of the bathrooms, and I'm asking questions through EVP, and I wasn't up against a wall or anything where anything could brush up against me, but it actually felt like something touched my shoulder, and I kind of looked around. There was nothing there, nobody around me at the moment, so that was definitely weird. Whether somebody really did brush up against me or there was something there, I can't say for sure, but I definitely felt something that made me turn around and look. So
yeah, I definitely like to go back with our own crew with a different kind of mindset on the whole thing, because like it's a little touristy. You know, they have these weekends where you go and do paranormal investigations, and they got a whole business thing going there, and it's cool. The place is awesome, but you know, like we could do it in a different manner.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, we'll be able to set up in a certain spot, and it's like it feels like, you know, they want the spirits to like entertain you or something, as if that's their job. So like that feels weird to go into it with that kind of mentality. But I would definitely like to do some sort of repeatable experiments where we can get a gauge of actually what's going on there.
And it's like 70 degrees out.
And it's 70
Yeah,
degrees.
it's nice out. I can wear shorts and a t-shirt and not double layered socks and
You're
still
not
not
going to
be
be
able
that
to
white guy in the winter with the shorts on?
No. Full disclosure, I had to quit and go out and sit in the heat in the car. So
Yeah, Brandon and Isabella were in the back seat, like all tuckered out, like.
yep, it was freezing.
It was pretty shitty.
It was really cold.
But it was a good time, and it definitely has a creepy vibe to it, and we got some good pictures and footage of the place. So next time we'll take it in another direction, I guess.
Yeah.
Ciao.